Good evening. I want to first of all congratulate all of you for coming tonight. I mean, evening, just so many fun things you could be doing, and you're here. So I just really appreciate you coming, and glad to see that you're wanting to come and continue the journey. Because here, this is session 5. We got one more next week, and then we'll wrap on it. So very glad to see you all here. So let's begin with the prayer that we've been using, what I like to call this retreatance prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's try to be here now. A place where everything happens, but the place that never seems like it's enough. We always hope the future is going to be better, but all that is needed for happiness, for wholeness, for freedom is in the now. So loving God, we seek to accept this now, this moment, where you are and where we want to be. We thank you for all who are gathered here as we come seeking your wisdom. We ask for your guidance, and we ask that we can be good listeners to the Holy Spirit. We pray gratefully in Jesus' name. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, Bonnie and I made a big commitment last Saturday night. We decided we were going to watch Oppenheimer. It's a big commitment. That movie's 3 hours long.
3 hours.
I looked it up today because I was just curious. 3 hours, or did everybody just say it's 3 hours? And the thing I saw said it was 180 minutes and 9 seconds.
Yes.
There we go. And then just a happy coincidence that then the Oscars were on, and Oppenheimer won 7 Oscars. And I was like, that's pretty impressive. What caught me, though, was, how many have you seen the movie? Yeah? Yeah. And even the very beginning, not even 10 minutes into the movie, Oppenheimer, he's in school still, and he tells the professor, hey, there's this big talk coming, this big deal guy is coming, we need to go to it. But he'd gotten a little bit of trouble, so everybody went to it, but he was told he had to stay until he finished something. He then scurries over and gets to hear this guy speak. And the person they have is Niels Bohr, who's a Danish physicist. And whether this is true or just made for TV, I don't know. But I want to read you what this guy says. Quantum physics is not a step forward. It's a new way to understand reality. Einstein opened the door. Now we're peering through, seeing a world inside our world, a world of energy and paradox that not everyone can accept. I heard that and it just stopped me. Wow. They're, of course, looking at this new scientific discovery, but to me, it's a perfect statement for the incarnation. It's the perfect statement for understanding who we are. It's the perfect statement for getting a deeper grasp of the reality that God dwells within us. I mean, this idea and understanding is not just a little step forward on your spiritual journey. It's not just, just another good idea, lots of good ideas, lots of good practices. I'll just take another little step forward. This is like a quantum leap. Understanding that God dwells within you. I mean, how could that not change everything? The incarnation, of course, Jesus coming, God becoming human. I mean, think about that. What do we know about God? For sure. Well, one thing we know for sure is that to be God is to become human. Because that's what God is. And if we can come to terms with that and understand all that that has to do for us in our own humanity, it's not a small thing. It's not just a little bit of a nice new understanding. It's a quantum leap forward in our faith life. It's this incredible realization that all of the things I might normally get caught up in my life don't stand a chance of being important when I come to terms with the reality of who I am. You know, we've talked about this recipe for happiness, you know. The first step is to understand really who you are, to know yourself, this aware presence, this aspect of your being that no matter what is going on in your life is always going to be brightly shining as aware and present and open and saying yes to that moment. And as such, we describe this is our soul. And the fact that it's always saying yes means that our soul is always at peace. We talked about the second step is to not just have this intellectual understanding, but to come to know it for certain. To know that this is the reality of your being. So that it's not just, oh yeah, another thought that I had amongst many other thoughts. I'll just put it in a category that's proper for thoughts that I find interesting. You know, I'll just make this whole category, yeah, that goes in that section, but not really changing my life. I mean, it's not going to be a quantum leap forward for us unless we actually start to live from that place. We recognize this profound, essential element of our being, and we start living from there instead of always just letting the ego drive us, you know, through life, worrying about this, fretting over that, dragging us into the past, dragging us into the future, so the peace and security of the now is unseen, unfelt, not experienced. The happiness that's available in every moment of now is missed because we're too caught up in where the ego is trying to take us, and the ego's insatiable desire to try to find happiness. The third step is the idea of detachment. Ultimately, we can't experience this deep union with our God if we're still attached to all the bright and shiny objects that are out there. I mean, we're attached to them because they're fun and they're enjoyable, and we like to do them, and it's, you know, the content of experience is pretty enticing. But until we can learn to let go of all that as our, oh, I'm happy because of this experience I had today. I mean, come on, admit how many people are happy because it was a pretty beautiful day today. I mean, the sun was shining, it was gorgeous, you know. And we're kind of forgiven if we're like, boy, that makes me feel pretty good, you know. But we know that those feelings are just fleeting. We're not after the little fun feeling of a sunny day. We're after the peace that passes understanding. And we're after this, you know, contentment, the equanimity that is available in every moment of being. You know, when I was a kid, we would go to Lincoln City, and I loved the ocean. I still, to this day, it's just my favorite place to go is to the beach. And just watch the waves just come in, just the pounding of the surf, just this relentless motion and activity. And I love it. But as a kid, you know, you're sitting there and you're watching it, and of course you want to go out and play in that, you know? You're like, that looks like a lot of fun, let's go do that. And, you know, my mom and dad are like all good parents, are saying, hey, be careful, you know? Those waves have a lot of power. And from the shore and just standing and look at it, I now have, because my parents have said this, I have an intellectual understanding that the waves have power. But I don't really know what that means. I don't have the felt experience of it. So we tiptoe out into the water, you know, you're up to your ankles and everything's fine. You get a little braver and you get out to your knees, and then, you know, the waves go out for a minute. You're like, hey, I was at my knees, now I'm at my ankles. I better go closer, you know. And then the big wave comes. And it knocks you down, and you roll over a few times, and you stand up, and your eyes are wide, you're just like, what was that? You know? sand is everywhere. You start walking back to, is there a towel around here somewhere? And now you know what the power of the ocean is. It's no longer just an intellectual understanding. It's a felt belief. You know what it is. I have a friend who's a scientist. He's a paint scientist. He's an expert with how paint works and on what kind of materials it works. And so he's got to deal with colors. And imagine that I went to him and said, I don't know what the color red is. His name happens to be Steve. So I say, hey, Steve, can you tell me what the color of red is? And so Steve gives me this scientific explanation of what red is. But I've never seen it. And so I'm sitting there at home and he's describing it, in all these formulaic ways. And I'm sitting at the kitchen table just, kind of trying to map it out for myself. Red, okay, this and this. And then my wife Bonnie walks in. And she has a red rose that she puts in a vase on the table. And I said, what is that's red? I just can't believe it. That's what red is? Wow. I thought I had an intellectual understanding of red, but this is just over the top. Now I know what red is. I mean, look at that. How deep and beautiful that is. I have this felt belief and understanding. I know what red is. Another friend who's an electrician. Imagine I don't know anything about electricity, which I really don't. And so he's telling me all about, how electronics work, what electricity is, hey, over in the Columbia River, they have these dams and these big turbines, and we're just generating massive amounts of electricity, and it powers all this stuff. And so, again, I'm sitting at the kitchen table and trying to figure all this out, electricity, watts, and amps, and I don't know what any of this means, but I'm trying to intellectually get it, and I just think I'm getting it when the toast pops up. So I go to get my toast, peanut butter toast, that's breakfast. But it doesn't pop all the way up. So I take a knife out and I stick it in the toast, and I start playing around with it, and then all of a sudden, it's like, what was that? Oh, that's what electricity is. Oh, okay, yes. Now it's not just an intellectual understanding, I have a felt understanding of electricity. And what we're talking about here in our own life of faith is to try to go from this head knowledge. I mean, your whole life you've studied, these things, the ways of God, and how the church has tried to help us unpack this intellectual understanding. And the key is to move from the intellectual understanding to the felt belief. I mean, I dare to say everybody who's come to this series of talks knew that they had a soul before they came to this. Everybody likely knew that God dwelled within their soul. But did you believe it to the point where it has changed your life? Or was it just another interesting factoid on the wall of all the interesting factoids of faith? I mean, how much of your faith life has spent just understanding stuff intellectually? You can, repeat it and talk about it and explain it maybe, but no felt understanding, no knowing at the level of your being that this is the reality. And once you have that, once you know it for sure for yourself, then it just opens the mind up and you recognize, hey, this is true for everybody. It's not just true for me, because you know that you did nothing to deserve it. This God dwelling within you is not based on anything. It's all this gratuitous gift from God. And if God was willing to give it to you and to me, then God certainly has given it to everyone else. And so that second step in this recipe for happiness, this felt belief and understanding, is crucial. And so you say, okay, well, if to get that, I just have to go jump in the ocean, or look at a red rose, or stick my finger in a light socket, then I'll do that. That's what it takes to know God. I'll do that. How do I have this felt experience of God? And what I want to tell you tonight is, it's the only thing you've ever had. You think you haven't had the experience of God? What do you think is happening when you look across the table and you see someone sitting there? What do you think you're experiencing? Skin, bones, hair? Or is not the presence of God dwelling within that person? When you go to the beach, or to the mountains, or to the forest, or wherever it is that you'd like to go, and you're looking out, what are you seeing there? Brown, tree, green leaves, that's all I see. Or do you recognize the divine in everything, everywhere you go? That's all you've ever seen. It's just that our eyes have been so trained to, just see this physical, the mechanical, the stuff of how we think this all works. That we've never had this experience of, oh my. And I would dare say most of us have had the experience of the oh my. But too often after we have that experience, we just, oh yeah, that was just this thing, And we don't attribute it to anything. So maybe I got off a little bit there or whatever. Instead of recognizing that was just a little glimpse. I just had that little glimpse. Not that if you have that, you're supposed to try to recreate it. I mean, sometimes people get too carried away with, oh, I had a glimpse, I need another one. It's not about the glimpse. God's giving you that just brief moment to help you understand the reality of what it is to be one with God. And the hope is that we can get to this place where we can say truly to God, I don't need a glimpse. I don't need anything. Because in this moment, you're already giving me everything. We started out the first night talking about the difference between fun and happiness, and we had this fun meter and the happiness scale, and I was kind of arguing for this idea that we could all be at 9.9 on the happiness scale. So I would ask you tonight, right now, as you're sitting here right now, just in your own mind, where are you? Are you at 9.9? In this moment, not tomorrow, not the next day, not last week, right now. This is the moment we have. This is the moment. And in this moment of now, where are you? You can't be 10, you're not in heaven. You can be at 9.9. If we're at something other than 9.9, then what we're telling God is that this moment is not enough. We're telling God that, there's something lacking in my life, in my experience. By definition, if you're not at 9.9, that means you're saying no to something. Something is going on in your life that you don't like. Your ego has labeled it as unhappiness, and you're saying no to that. You might even be asking God as you walk in the door, God, I need something more. I need, take this away from me or take that away from me. And those prayers are fine. I mean, we read about, St. Paul saying, I had this thorn in the flesh and I asked God to take it away. And God said, no, not good. My grace is sufficient for you. When we're always seeking something more, we're setting ourselves up to be constantly in a state of unhappiness. And when we can accept what is and recognize that peace and happiness is always available to us, by saying yes to the moment. And we say, how can I say yes to this moment? This moment's not good. There's strife, there's war, there's physical ailments. There's all these things I can list off. We can go on and on about the things that are not good. Why should I be at peace? And you can be at peace in the midst of all that because God dwells within you. And that peace that God is yours. It doesn't mean you don't work towards solving the problems of the world. Of course we do. We give our efforts to it. But the key is we do that in a mode of detachment. This is the third aspect. We have to become detached from the outcomes of our efforts. Because we all want to do good things in the world. I mean, look around this room and I see all kinds of people who've done all kinds of just great, amazing things. And we want to do those good things, but if we're attached to the outcome, then that means we're attached to something other than God. And at the end, to be in union with God, the only thing we can be attached to is God. And so how can you fully pour your heart into something and at the same time say, let it be? We're going to give our very best effort, and if we just fumble on the 1 yard line and it all falls apart and it doesn't happen, that's okay. You know, blessed be the name of the Lord. It's okay. Whatever is, is. Because ultimately, it's our rejection of what is that is the source of our unhappiness. It's the failure to allow for what is to be. And it's not easy. It's a big challenge. One of the spiritual masters in our tradition says he was a priest and he had people coming to him all the time asking people, will you pray for me, Father? Pray for me. I've got this ailment or I've got this thing, whatever's happening. And he said, I'd always oblige with a prayer, but he said, I always think to myself, every time I got asked for a prayer, I would say, why, in his own mind, he would think about them, why do you leave yourself? Why are you coming to me? God is right within you. What are you seeking from me that you think that I have that you don't already have? Stay within yourself. Go into yourself more deeply. Because whatever it is that you're praying for, at the end of the day, you don't need it. You don't need it. We're so attached to our health and our wealth and our activities and our relationships that we just come begging God to solve these things. And God simply says, I gave you the ultimate way to get through this predicament you find yourself in. I'm living within you. What more do you want from me? So this spiritual master, he says, we use God like a candle. We're searching in the dark. God, please give me this. I need this. I can't find it. I can't do it myself. I need you, God. I need you. And so we grab God like a candle off the shelf and we light it. And now we use the candle to find, oh, that's what I needed. I got it. Now we get it. And then what do we do with the candle? We blow it out and stick it back on the shelf. Because we're only doing that. We're not doing it intentionally to be disrespectful for God. And God certainly understands. Disappointed and like, oh boy, another human asking me for stuff. I mean, that's not what's going on in the least. God is just looking at us in love and just hoping that day by day we're going to get a little bit more and a little bit more. And then finally we'll stop asking God for all this stuff that God knows we don't need. It's unnecessary. It has nothing to do with our happiness. So why do we keep asking for it? Because we're attached to it. And that's why the masters can say the happiest person in the world is the one with the greatest detachment. Because once you realize that you don't need anything, then you've got it. You've got it completely. Now you can give yourself to everything. Because you come to it with just this freedom and this openness. And And without a need, like, I better get my share, but I mean, I'm working hard, I better get some kudos out of this. You know how many hours I put into, this thing, and how come they didn't show up, and they only worked for an hour, and I worked for 5 hours, All of that stuff, which if you remember the tree, on the right hand, we have the older son. That's the older son doing all the good stuff, from a place of bitterness, judgment, and frustration, And so we do that for a while, and then we're like, oh, well, nobody's helping me do all these good church things, so I'm going to just, forget that. And we chuck it. And then we just climb to the other side of the tree, and we start doing what the prodigal son did. I'm going to try to get happy doing all this other stuff the world has to offer. I'm going to start taking more trips and buying bigger cars and a better house and just more and more and more. Until we realize, no, that didn't do it. And then the pendulum swings back. And we're on this back and forth. And God, the Father, at all times, right there in the middle of the tree, just patiently waiting. Oh, you're going to do that little thing now? Okay, all right. Well, when you're done, like doing that, then, I'll be here, And then we go to the other side. Yeah, when you're done doing that, just come on back. I'll be here. That's not, wringing God's hands over the fact that, you have, made it to union with God. God's not worrying about it and upset about it and all of this. God is at peace. Because God knows God has all the time there is. He'll just be patient for you. I'm not going anywhere. When you're done doing your little trips and you finally have enough of the swinging back and forth, we'll be together. God is at peace. So we try to have these experiences, and we find times when we're like, hey, you know what? I think I found the sweet spot. I kind of got to that little place, I'm really at peace, and everything seems to be going quite nicely. Might have been just a beautiful day like today. You thought, oh, I'm going to go out and work in the yard a little bit and just having a beautiful day. And then something out of nowhere just trips, You go, in one moment, everything was fine and beautiful. And then all of a sudden, there's this kind of nagging sense of something's not quite right. I thought I was having this peaceful, happy day. And then all of a sudden, sometimes something triggers us. We get a phone call or an email, or somebody's, asking for our time or whatever. And so that puts us on the downhill slope. But other times it seems to come from nowhere. Like, why am I all of a sudden not happy? I talk about this in the book where I say, one day it was so obvious to me. I was riding the lawnmower, I just having a nice morning, doing some chores, and I went from just this peaceful moment to, I just noticed it immediately. Like, wait, what is that? Where did that come from? This little nagging thought of just something wasn't quite right. Going from a moment where everything was fine, the moment was enough, and then all of a sudden, something wasn't enough. And I couldn't even quite put my finger on it. I didn't know what it was about, but because I've been just very in tune with trying to pay attention to myself. I wasn't allowing the world to just constantly carry me away from myself all the time. I tried to really hone in on what's going on, And so I had this conversation with myself, start talking out loud. Okay, Steve, what's going on? What's this thing that's happening? I mean, you were having a fine day, and then now all of a sudden you're sensing this little unhappiness. And my mind immediately tried to quell that. I would imagine all of you have your go-to methods for dealing with unhappiness, little feelings of sadness. For most of us, it's thinking. I'm going to think something different. A lot of times it's, I'm going to make a plan. Oh, what I need to do is I need to get together with some friends. And I'm gonna let's have lunch, And the very thought of having a lunch a lot of times will be enough, even if we don't enjoy the lunch at all, Just the thought that now I'm gonna do something. Oh, I start feeling better. But I stopped myself in that moment. I said, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna let my mind just make a plan so that my thinking can drag me out of this. I want to be like, no, what's going on here? And I just cut that whole process short and said, who is the one, Steve, that's feeling a little uneasiness right now, a little dis-ease? Who is that? It's not my immortal soul. It's not the place where God is dwelling within me. It's this egoic self that is always seeking something more, you know? And it's a matter of becoming really in tune with yourself. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. You spend more time thinking about yourself than anything else. You spend more time in conversation with yourself than you do anything else in your life. Your mind is constantly talking. I mean, you've had a running dialogue since we walked in here tonight, you know? I mean, you know, it's just going constantly. How about we start to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take charge of that. This thing that's constantly just going, I'm going to take charge of it. And I'm going to start allowing that to work for me instead of work against me. By always just continuing to just let the mind run. Yet 4 hours later, and I just spent 4 hours letting my mind run through 18 different scenarios of how I'm going to talk to my neighbor about the tree is over the fence line. You know, or whatever the issue might be for you, you know. We just need to cut out all of that stuff. One sociologist said 95% of all of our thinking is repetitive and useless. Imagine that, 95% of your thinking repetitive and useless. I mean, that's just a sad commentary on where we've gotten to. But what is all that thinking doing? It's trying to get us to the place of happiness. I mean, every thought you've ever had was to try to get you to solve this problem. Why do you want to solve the problem? Because if I don't have that problem, then I can be happy. And so everything is always dragging us back to this effort to try to be happy. I mean, that's all the ego does. The ego is just incessantly trying to find happiness because the ego doesn't know anything about the soul. The ego has no idea that God is dwelling within you. And so we got to turn that off. And we got to live from this place where we recognize what's going on in our life. So sometimes then people end up bringing up like, okay, well, that sounds all well and good. I'm going to really pay attention to myself, and I'm not going to let the content of my experience bother me anymore. I painted one of my rooms, I had a spare room at home. I painted it completely white. And I've got nothing on the walls, and I've got even a white blind to put over the window. And then I'm going to go in there every day, and I'm going to spend at least a couple hours a day sitting in this white room staring at a white wall. Because, you know, hey, the content of my experience has nothing to do with happiness. So that's what I'm not going to allow the world to drag me away from this any longer. You know? If that's what you're planning on doing, you know, take the white paint back to the store. You know, this is not what we're after here. This is not what it's about at all. It's about becoming free so that all the stuff that you enjoy doing, now you do from a greater place of freedom. And the enjoyment level just goes up through the roof. Because instead of like, okay, I love to do this activity, but you know, sometimes the activity doesn't turn out quite right, and because it's got to be perfect so that I can be happy, I've got to control every aspect of it. And now all my friends just, you know, see me as controlling all this stuff, and nobody's having fun anymore. Instead, if you say, you know what, I know who I am. I know I'm at peace. I know I'm happy. And I know that this experience we're going to have can't change that. It has no ability to impact my innate peace and happiness. So I can just go to it and be open and free and enjoy the heck out of it. And then if it kind of all, you know, falls apart in the end, you just laugh about that and quit taking everything so seriously, as if anything depends on the outcome of anything. You know? I mean, ultimately, right? I mean, we all think everything is so important. But as we sit here in this moment right now, what's the thing in your life that was so important when it was so important that makes any difference to you now? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The things that you love, once you have this kind of change, this opening of who you are and living from this new place, the things that you naturally love, you're still going to naturally love. It doesn't change your personality. It doesn't change the kind of food you like. It doesn't change what you enjoy doing. And it's not about curbing doing any of that unless you're already like way over the top excessive. It's just bringing it in, trying to have this balance. You know, I talk so much about the interior life and trying to live from that place because I'm trying to do this corrective. Because in my own life, I lived so much for what was going on outside of me. And, you know, a lot of it was good stuff. I mean, again, you guys are all involved in so much good stuff. But the question becomes, have we become identified with the stuff that we're doing? All the good stuff that we constantly are doing. It's instead just taking us away from this interiority that we have. And so, you know, I'm so focused on the interior aspect of it because we're all so focused on the exterior. But the problem can be that you think, oh, okay, forget the exterior stuff. It's just the interior. That's all that's matters. I mean, after all, Steve keeps saying, who am I essentially? And I'm essentially this aware presence. I'm essentially my soul. But the word essential doesn't mean only. Essential means essential. Essential means without this, you would not be. Without your soul, you would not be. And your soul is present in every moment, so is your body. And so it's not to deny the body at all. It's just that we've given the body so much time and attention in our life, it's time to try to even score a little bit. I mean, you could spend, I would guess, I'll just talk for myself, that maybe not be true for you, but I would bet if I spent the rest of my life, every moment, only living from the interior of my being, I wouldn't even get halfway to catching up with how much time I spent on my body and my thoughts and the exterior life. So I'm just arguing for this. Let's try to get balanced, you know? Let's try to live this life that recognizes the inherent wonder and beauty of our bodies and all of God's creation. It's all this beautiful gift. And God wants us to enjoy it, to participate, to be fully alive. I mean, what did they say about Jesus? They didn't say, oh yeah, you know that guy who's always just meditating up and, he doesn't seem to be involved in any of, life. He has no friends. He just kind of is this blah guy. You know that Jesus? No. They're like, this guy who's with the drunkards and he's doing all this stuff. They appear to be enjoying life too much that the holy people couldn't see him as the Messiah because the Messiah wouldn't do that. Wouldn't have that kind of behavior. It's that radical way of being in the world that, in the quote from Oppenheimer, the paradox that not everyone can accept. And this is so true within the church. The paradox that you can be fully alive, fully engaged, enjoying life, and be one with your God. I would argue that's what being one with God looks like. It's not staring at a blank wall saying, no, I can't do that, no, I can't do that, I don't need that for happiness, I don't need that for happiness. I mean, it's true, you don't need it for happiness, but it's sure a lot of fun, and you might as well go do it. Because doing the fun stuff is not a problem. Having stuff is not a problem. The problem is the attachment to it. Early on in the spiritual life, we look at, people, places, things as being kind of a stumbling block. They're roadblocks for us. But when we pass through that and we get to the other side, we recognize those things are no problem at all. They never were a problem. It's just how much attention and attachment we gave to them was the problem. We ended up moving God off to the side, keeping God on the shelf, our spare candle just when we needed something. Then I'm going to grab the candle and now God will give it to me and then I can put God back. So this unchanging self that I mentioned in the book is that this aspect of your being, the things you enjoy, your personality, and all that's going to continue on. And it allows that to flourish. So you don't have to be worried about, I don't know if I want to go down that road because I just don't want this austere life, where everything is just about God and all that stuff. Boy, this sounds kind of heavy. Until you come to the felt belief that God is happiness. And then you're like, oh yeah, I need more than that God thing, you know, because for sure we all want happiness, right? Okay, so let's get into some practical steps. What are some things, because this becomes the number one question after people start going, okay, hey, sounds great, now what am I supposed to do? Probably one of the things I would say is, you know, well, get a good microphone, that'll be where you start. The first step to happiness. The first step to happiness, I say, you know, when you wake up in the morning, if the first thing you did in the morning was to say, who am I? I'm an immortal soul. God dwells within me. I am peace and happiness. If you start your day with that, then your whole body can say yes to the day. Instead of waking up, we got 100,000 things we're going to try to accomplish in the day, and so we better just get busy. There's a sense of anxiety to it because there's so much we're trying to accomplish. You know, it's a big key to our spiritual lives is most of us are far too busy to have a deep spiritual life. It's just the fact of the matter. You're far too busy to have a deep spiritual life. Why are you far too busy? What are you far too busy doing? You're far too busy trying to be happy. I mean, I hope I've made that point abundantly clear by now that you understand that everything I'm doing to try to be happy. I'm so busy because I'm trying to be happy, and the key to being happy is to just recognize you already have it. It allows for this tremendous freedom. I don't have to do all those things. Well, no, you don't. There's no requirement that you do all those things. But those are good things. Shouldn't I be doing good things? Well, if you feel at the place of peace that you should go and do that thing, then go do that thing. And as soon as that turns into something that is not from a place of peace, then you stop doing that thing. Because we're looking for this balance. And it's not about you. We don't need another savior. There's nothing in your life that you are the savior for. It's kind of hard to come to that realization because we want to be the savior. We want to solve all these problems. It comes from a good place. It comes from a place of giving and loving. It just doesn't come from the place that actually enables you to be happy. And instead it leads you to end up trying to control too much. I think the biggest key for me was just at any point, I just tried to become really in tune with what was going on with my interior life. And every time something came up that seemed to grab my peace away from me, phone call, email, demands on time, requests for this or that or whatever, and I just felt it out, then I would just stop. And I would have a 10-second conversation with myself. Steve, what part of you is upset right now? What part of you is feeling anxious? What part of you is feeling sad? What part of you is feeling lonely? What part of you is feeling like this moment's not enough? Oh, yeah, that's my egoic self that's trying to accomplish all this or thinks it needs that in order to be happy. Okay, so you make that recognition. You walk yourself back. And at first, literally, I would have an out-loud conversation with myself because I needed to. I couldn't just, oh, I get it, yeah, I can see what's going on. But believe me, after you've done it for the 1500th time, you don't have to have the, 10-minute conversation with yourself, and finally get back to, okay, I finally made it back. Yes, I'm one with God, okay, I'm at peace. And then, you still have to deal with the phone call, right? I mean, the phone call didn't go away. You still have to attend to it. But you're now attending it from this place of peace and love and equanimity and intelligence instead of just, I gotta solve another problem, and being upset all the way through. So this walking yourself back, getting yourself to always attending to life from a place of peace and equanimity. We've talked about the need for a more contemplative prayer life. We talked about having this sacred word that we might use that enables us to still the mind so that our busy mind doesn't take us all over the place. Spending time in quiet meditative, contemplative prayer. I mean, they've done all kinds of studies on this stuff. I mean, the actual rewiring of your brain as people get into a more meditative life. And so allowing yourself to have that time where you kind of shut things down. Because how can we expect the body to come under the control of the soul and act in the place of this oneness with God? The body is constantly allowed to run rampant. I mean, we just do it. We all do it. It's a very difficult thing unless you set aside the time to make it happen. And then the more that becomes this, way of being, it's no longer difficult. 20 minutes at first seems like, oh my gosh, that's excruciating. And then as you do it more and more, the mind settles down and you get into the rhythm of it, the routine of it. It's not excruciating. Then it's peaceful. This is your rendezvous with God. This is your time of the day when you say, God, I'm going to be with you. And then we're not going to judge how that goes. We're not going to get upset at the end of the 20 minutes, no matter what happens. This is the judgment-free zone. You don't get any judgment about your prayer life. You just get up and go about your day. And then you do it again that night, next morning, or whatever your schedule is going to be. We talked about the need for attachment. I think having a person that you can spend time with and be accountable to and share your life with is really crucial. It's such an important part of it. I mean, we all know how hard it is to be free. And we get caught all the time. And so if we have somebody who can be accountable to, and if we give them the permission, hey, when you see that I'm caught, would you please say, hey, it looks like you're caught in a seat. Hey, you know what? Is that really what you're going to do now? It's just a tremendous value. If you have a spiritual director, that can be very helpful. I know it's really hard to get a spiritual director. It's hard to, to get somebody you can have that relationship with. But just with someone that you love and care about, if two people look at each other and say, hey, the goal for us, the goal for life is union with God. That's the goal for you. That's the goal for me. Let's help us, each other, get there. So when I'm caught, you can say, hey, let's pay attention to this. Becoming active in the church community can be very helpful. There's this balance of being too busy, and then there's the other side of it where, you're not giving enough. Some people aren't giving any time. So finding that right balance for you, participating within the church community can be a beautiful and helpful thing in your spiritual life. I think this last one, making yourself a list each night. This would be a good practice to do. Is each night until this becomes just habitual and routine. If each night you sat down and said, I want to make a list of all the fun things I did today. So mowed the lawn, and whatever, did all the fun stuff, and then make a second list, all the things that made me happy today. Now the thought is going to be, well, aren't those the same thing? I mean, what was fun, those are the things that made me happy. But the fun list will be varied. Every time you do it, it'll be something, you did something different, The list of what made me happy always be the same. Every night you'll write the same thing down. What made me happy today? When I didn't seek anything. When I said to nothing. When I accepted everything as it was. And then make yourself a list of what was not fun today. And all these different things, Talking to the neighbor, or whatever it was that wasn't fun for the day. And then you make a list that says, what made me unhappy today? And that list of what made you unhappy will always be the same every night. What made me unhappy? When I rejected what is. When I was seeking. Because happiness is the place where you're no longer seeking. You're not saying no. It's this place of accepting what is. This is what your aware presence does constantly. It's aware and present no matter what is going on. It's not saying no to any of it. It's just aware and present, taking it in. So if you start making those lists, it'll become clear to you so quickly. The things that I thought were making me happy were just fun things. And have nothing to do with what was making me happy, because when I was happy, when I was saying yes, and when I stopped pushing against what was, when I was detached and I just said, I'm going to work hard at this, but the outcome doesn't matter. That's the place of peace and equanimity. So if you go through that process of making these lists, it'd be quite helpful to you. So those are most of the little just practical things. I actually ran across one other item that I just found so helpful to me. And it's the idea, if you imagine this old-fashioned TV set, you actually had to change the channel, the knob. So you turn it to channel 1. What's on channel 1? The body. Okay? The body has all of the needs that the body has. I mean, we live in these bodies. They're beautiful. They're wonderful. They've got to eat. They've got to sleep. They've got to do all the stuff that the body does. That's channel 1. We turn to channel 2. Channel 2 is the personalities, the relationships, the jobs, the stuff that we do. All of that is channel 2 stuff. We turn to channel 3. Channel 3 is the soul. We turn to channel 4, and channel 4 is the oneness. So let's back up. 99% of us spend 99% of our time on channel 1 and 2. Yeah? What's going on with the body? I got to take care of this. I got to do this. I'm feeling this way today. And then, that person at work is driving me crazy, and I got this deadline, and the neighbor said this, I got a flat tire. I mean, just on and, all of this stuff. All of this energy goes into channels 1 and 2. All of the fighting, all of the political stuff that's happening, it's all channel 1 and 2 stuff. So, if we can try to get off of that a little bit, we have to be on channel 1 and 2. You've got to do stuff with the body. We have to make a living. We have to, there's no problems there. No problems. The problem is when we spend all of our time there and we never get to channel 3. Because what happens when you turn to channel 3? Now I don't see all these bodies and all this stuff in the room and the things you guys do. I just see souls. This room is just full of souls. That's a reality right now. And at the level of the soul, there's nothing for me to judge any of you about. Because my soul and your soul is the same. Not that, we're individual souls. You have your soul, I have my soul. But my soul is at peace, is at rest, is one with God. Your soul is at peace, is at rest, is one with God. If I'm on channel 3, there's nothing to be judging other people about. There's nothing to be arguing about or fighting about. You just see this beautiful, wonderful gift of God of all these souls. If for 1 second in our life we would be privileged enough to turn to channel 4, it's all one. We just see all of us one with God. It would be the answer of Jesus' prayer right before he died. I pray, Father, that they will be one as we are. That's it. That's where we want to be. That would be the experience of heaven. It could be the experience here and now. It could be your experience here and now. But you got to get off channels 1 and 2 at least a little bit. One day I decided, hey, I'm going to be on channel 3. This is a channel 3 day for me. I'm just like, I'm going to be on channel 3 all day. I'm going to, I had actually, that day, there was a meeting here in this room for the Vicarious, having a meeting. And so I had a couple little errands to run, and then I was going to come to this meeting. So I'm like, hey, I'm channel 3 today. I'll go away. And one of the things I had to do was stop by the bank. And I've been making a deposit for somebody on their behalf just to help them out for about 10 years. Been doing this. Stop by there, go up to the teller, new teller, doesn't know me. And I walk in there, I slide the deposit, and of course, this is not my account, I'm depositing for someone else. And of course, she's doing her beautiful job. What's your relationship with this account? Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'm a lawyer. You're gonna tell me what I need to do? I know what I need. You don't need to just run it through the little machine, and when you write a see, I gotta get to it before me. Now, I didn't say all those things. All of those things went through my mind. I did say, I've been doing this for 10 years. Kind of like, there's nothing to question me about. There's nothing untoward here. I'm just helping these persons. As soon as it got out of my mouth, I just kind of turned my head to the side and I thought, oh, Mr. Channel 3, huh? Nice. Nice. Yeah, all you see is bright, shining souls. That's all you see today. You are just, you got it, Steve. Good job. And then now I'm standing there and I'm just laughing at myself. Because there's nothing to be upset about. I mean, our failings, we're going to fall down, It's like they asked St. Benedict, what do you guys do in the monastery all the time? And he says, we fall down and we get it. We fall down and we get it. We fall down and we get it. This is our life. We're going to fall down. The only question is, are you going to get up? And can you get up with a smile on your face? Or are you going to be like, oh, I'm just such a terrible at this whole thing. I just can't do it. I'm just going to forget about it. No, so then, as soon as I recognize that, now I go from this kind of like, don't ask me for stuff, to like thinking in my mind, okay, let's see, I got a passport, I got a birth certificate, what else can I give her to prove who I am? I'll just give you anything. What do you want? I'll give you everything. Because from the place of Channel 3, you just give, you don't care, it doesn't matter. Whatever you need, yeah, you want some more information, I'll give you more information. Whatever it is, it's gonna work. If we could all spend a little bit of time on Channel 3 each day, it's a place of freedom. It's a place of love. It's a place of equanimity. It's a place of happiness. It's everything you've been working for your entire life. Turn to Channel 3. Make a commitment to be on Channel 3 at least for one moment every day. And then the goal is that one moment, because that moment on Channel 3, that's 9.9 stuff. I mean, when you're truly standing there and you see this chaos going on in life, and you're just looking at everything and going, wow, look at all these souls, it's incredible. That's a 9.9 moment. And the key is how do I extend it? How do I make that moment last longer? Hey, 30 seconds today, and maybe a minute tomorrow, and then just incrementally, a little bit by a little bit. And before you know it, you're gonna be like, I'm on Channel 3 so much, It's just amazing. And everybody's looking at like, how are you so happy all the time? Why are you so at peace? What is your secret? And you're gonna say, I'm just being me. I know who I am. And when I look out, all I see is God looking back at me. That's the place. That can be our reality. So we've had 5 sessions. We've got one more to go. The last one, I'm going to give a little bit of a recap, so I'll have a few things to say. But then it's going to be open mic night. Okay? It's going to be a chance to ask questions. So if you've been sitting here thinking, I just don't get this part of it, or I've tried that and it doesn't work for me, so what's going wrong, or whatever it might be that is just, you've been pondering. For anybody who's watching on the videos that they've been taking, it's not going to be videotaped next time, because I don't want people to feel like I would ask the question, but then we're going to YouTube for eternity. And I like things eternal, but not me asking questions, So, I'm okay with it. I'm happy it's on there, but for next time, for the sake of people being honest and asking the question, we're not going to tape it next time. So for people that have been enjoying it from the comfort of their home, it won't be there, just so people know that. So that's what's gonna be next time. Okay, looking forward to it. Thanks a lot for coming. Have a nice evening.